Hello and welcome to The Toughest Choice. I'm Stephanie Reynolds. I'm just thrilled to have Veresh Sita with me, who is the founder and CEO of Vasana. And Veresh is a Fortune 500 tech executive who has turned mission-driven entrepreneur on a journey to upgrade human capability, starting with the mind. Very interesting. We get to hear more about that. After leading technology at global brands like Starbucks, F5, WeWork, Alaska Airlines, and Avish Budget Group, Veresh stepped away from the corporate world to build Vasana, a behavioral health platform that uses neuroscience and AI to help people thrive under pressure. Veresh's values and passion were deeply shaped by his upbringing in the apartheid era of South Africa. Growing up in this environment, he experienced firsthand the importance of mental agility and resilience in overcoming life's challenges. As a young community leader, he also witnessed the strength of collective action, serving as an electoral officer during South Africa's first democratic elections that brought Nelson Mandela to power. He is now based in the US, and he blends emotional intelligence with deep business acumen to help organizations build high-performing, human-centered teams. Welcome, Varesh.
Thanks, Stephanie. I couldn't be more excited to be here. And, anytime I get to hang out with you and spend some time with you, it's certainly a treat. I leave our conversations with little nuggets and little insights. Sometimes it's a 1 degree shift, sometimes it's a 180-degree shift.
Oh boy.
But I love our interaction. So, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for being, for agreeing to be on the show. You have so much to share. You have so much experience and fascinating background. I'd love to start in the current time and kind of help our listeners understand. Tell us about Vasana. Tell us about what brought you to this company.
Yeah, of course. I love the fact that you said, let's start in the current time because that's what we want to tell most people, like just be present in the moment, right?
Mm,
So I love the fact that you start this journey with where are we today? I think that's
thank
fantastic. I really think, Stephanie, that Vasana is the culmination of my life's work. I've taken everything I've learned throughout my career from a technology perspective, leading people, to really understanding people and the behavioral and neuroscience I've brought into companies to help people thrive, to build Vasana. At its core, we are developing a behavioral genome. So think about it as, on your physical body side, you go and you get a blood test. And the blood test tells you so much about what's happening in your body, right? Your blood type, your
you.
white blood cells, red blood cells, um, cholesterol levels, all of that. But what's the equivalent of that for your mental health, your behavioral health? There isn't. And so we develop.
No measure for behavioral health.
Exactly. And so we in the process of developing what we're calling a behavioral genome. And our ultimate goal, of course, my life's purpose right now is to help people thrive. That's how I think about it. And, I want to apply this in multiple contexts. First one, just helping people with their overall mental health and behavioral health. I think it is the number one epidemic of our time right now. Uh,
Mm,
I think things like cardiovascular health, cancer health, and mortality rates related to that are gonna flatline because of how much work has gone into it. But mental and behavioral health is going to be on the rise. So that's the first thing. The second thing we want to address is just this concept of loneliness. I
mm.
think loneliness is a continually growing thing, which is again impacting people's mental and behavioral health. And within that is this notion of relationships, the relationships we have with people. I like to say the relationships we have with people is the number one source of joy in our lives and is the number one source of angst and stress in our lives, right? And so, like, how do we
So
get
true.
these relationships in balance? Um, And then the last dimension is using behavioral science and neuroscience to build high performance teams, right? Ultimately, we spend so much time on projects and working with people. How do we build these teams to be highly performative and they trust one another and there's psychological safety and they just do amazing things together? I think there's a neuroscience around how to do that. Companies are all, I like to say companies are all focused on the hardware and the software. And I'm like, the hardware is working, the software is working. We need to upgrade the humanware.
Mm, the
And so,
humanware.
yeah,
That's powerful. Oh, so I want to unpack a couple things.
yeah, yeah.
First, I've been saying the company name wrong, Vasana instead of Vasana. So I want to just say that for our listeners. And then, um, so you are really what I heard you say was, okay, we're addressing a lot of the physical concerns that we have from a health standpoint. And there really isn't a cohesive approach or cohesive way to assess mental health in a way that is accessible, is, not only the information, but then how to actually solve for some of those gaps.
Absolutely, right. I
Okay.
mean, if you think about if anyone today needs mental behavioral therapy, finding a therapist is impossible. Scheduling appointments is impossible. The cost of it is exorbitant, often not covered by insurance. If it's covered by insurance, people are apprehensive to claim it from insurance. And then it's largely based on talk therapy, right? And so the efficacy of it is not high. Um,
Mm,
and the
mm,
time to value is long. And I just think with modern day technology, the things we can now do to move from an observed science to a real data science to really uncover what's happening with people can really change the game. 5 years ago, this vision is not a new vision. I've had this vision, but I couldn't find the path for how to execute on this vision. And I would say to people, this vision is a multiple lifetime vision. I don't see
mm.
that anymore. I think we can achieve it in this lifetime because of what has happened with technology. The rate and pace of technology is accelerating at an accelerating pace. And
Yes.
that just for our company, what we've been able to achieve in the last few months, weeks, days, just in the last 24 hours, because of technology is phenomenal. And I think the ability to use that to empower human beings, not to replace them, and to do amazing things with people, and to help them thrive ultimately is where all of my focus and attention is going these days.
Well, that inspires me so much. As you know, of course, I've been focused on emotional and mental health. As a coach, this is what we spent a lot of time on with individuals. We helping people get clear about who they are and how they want to proceed. And I also think that it's inspiring to think about bringing that to the world in the workplace, uh, to give people tools and access to healing in an area that's been very taboo. It's been very taboo over the probably centuries here. And to really, oftentimes as a coach, I might mention therapy to a client, and I
Right.
may have been the first person to talk to them about it ever as a
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah, you're spot on. And companies and leaders and managers are all about action. And I'm like, it's time, yes, action, but also attention. It's time for you to pay attention to what's happening to your people and the environment around you. Um, I'll share transparently. In my team meetings, we have a weekly team meeting with the entire team. And I probe the beginning of every meeting. I ask my teams, how's everyone doing on a scale of 1 to 10? And I'm
Mm,
creating a mental chart for everyone, right? I
mm,
plot how everyone's doing. And if I see that they're off their baseline, then I reach out to them. This past week, we did something different. And I asked people to start to describe them, 3 words to describe how they feel.
mm,
Steph, over 50% of people on my team said they felt tired.
mm, mm, mm,
I'm like, think about it. Like, I'm a human first behavioral company. This is all I do for a living, creating spaces. And that was the reality that 50% of people on my team felt they were tired. And we started probing more. Let's understand more. And what we found is it had nothing to do with the work. It had nothing to do with the work schedule. It had nothing to do with the team. Each and every person, it had to do with what was going on in their life,
Yeah.
things that they were dealing with. One of the team members were dealing with an issue with a parent. Another person was dealing with another situation with a family member. Everyone had things going on in their personal life, which shows up at work. Now, had we not created the psychological safety for people to
Yes.
even say, I feel tired,
Yes.
we would have not even known this, nor
Yes.
would we have methods to address it. And so now there are things we are doing, putting into place to help people, right? But this is where I'm saying, the last 30 years, everything was about efficiency, 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 action. This is the moment for attention. It's time to pay attention to what's going on.
I I really love this, and it really is, in knowing you as I have over the years, you've always been a people first leader, not in any way, not hitting the bottom line, if anything, knocking it out of the park. But I've always seen you as a people first leader. So for you to take that passion and focus that you've had and then turn it into a modality and then live it, you're walking the talk inside your own company, is so needed today and such a bold step forward. So I'm going to ask you about leadership in general
Sure.
and maybe a little bit more about Vasana before we close off today, because it's fascinating and I look forward to hearing more about how it evolves. Help our listeners know what brought you to becoming a leader. You've been a leader for a while, and through lots of different environments. I'd love to hear what brought you to leadership.
Yeah, I I have a very interesting relationship with the word leadership, and we'll talk about that. Um, but there was never a moment that I recall where I sat down and I said, I want to be a leader, or I want to pursue a path of leadership, and this is a calling, and this is what I want to do. I think it just unfolded organically. As you know, I grew up in South Africa. I grew up in apartheid South Africa. And, we grew up in a community. And in many ways, um, my youth was filled with activism. And so I don't think about myself as a leader. I think about myself as a community activist.
Mm,
And, there was always a mission or a purpose that I needed to get people rallied around. Like, let's go after this mission. And, there's a few that just, jump top of mind. One is, of course, apartheid, right? And just the fight for freedom. And how do we get people aligned around this fight for freedom? And so, I would just rally people, guys, we need to be doing something about this to fight for our freedom. Or this was the time, you're talking 30, 40 years ago where things like AIDS, the AIDS epidemic in Africa was everywhere. And so how do we rally people around AIDS awareness campaigns? Or drugs, drugs were everywhere. And so anti-drug campaigns. And so it was just within the community, it was just within me that there's a mission that needs to be addressed. And I would just organically, get my friends and my family and their friends and their family aligned around this mission. Um,
mm,
and so, that's where it just started. And so my corporate world also became about that. It's like, how do we just build things that matter to people?
mm,
And through that, I just found a natural ability to inspire people, but it was all around just finding a mission and inspiring people to that mission. And then leadership just became an sort of organic byproduct of that. I don't even like the term leadership as, to define me. And this is a bit of a, my warped thinking, right? When and corporates did this to me because I actually got performance reviews, and in my performance review, I got things that said things like, "You have an incredible ability to create followership," right? Which in one case, like, awesome, that's great. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do.
mhm,
Because if I'm a leader, that means I have people following, and it's this weird hierarchical thing. And I'm like, no, I don't want people following me. I want people to be the best version of themselves. So I'm not looking
mhm.
for followers. I'm looking for people to do amazing things. Um,
yes, and I'm going to add on to that if I can. That aspect of selflessness that you're speaking to is what draws people.
Right.
You want to follow because it's like you and I were talking before we started this recording. We were
Absolutely.
talking about the fact that it's not that simple to just become,
Yes.
to be selfless, to
Absolutely.
actually, and so you had a drive, your circumstances and your talent, your innate belief and ability actually motivated you to organize in the communities.
Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
you took that selfless focus into the environments that you went into.
Totally.
But the business world doesn't know how to bottle that,
Yes.
right?
And so when I talk to my team and I engage with people, like, I'm not your leader. I'm actually your teammate. I'm your co-conspirator. Right. I'm your partner in crime here, right? In fact, when a lot of people support causes, we use this term ally. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not even your ally. Ally means you go do whatever you want to do. I'm sitting on the sidelines and I endorse what you're doing. I'm like, no, I'm not an ally. I'm a co-conspirator. I'm right there with you, right?
Yes,
So I think about
yes.
myself more as an activist and a co-conspirator than I do as a leader. But I do get, what it means to be a leader, and I take that with that comes incredible responsibility, and I take that very seriously.
I'm sure you do. And so I guess, for those leaders, because this podcast is really for those that are leading and aspire to lead.
Sure.
What or be co-conspirators, and which I love. I have another, interviewee who called it player coach. I'm part of the team here,
Right.
and uh, co-conspirator has a lot of energy in it for sure because it's like let's figure this out together, which I think is so energetically how you come across and have always since I've known you. I think how then, from your point of view, because you bring this uniqueness, you've lived in these structured environments on top of your historic, kind of upbringing, how would you describe success? Because one of my questions is always, tell me about success you've had. Tell me how you would describe success. And I'm curious, because you kind of stand outside the bubble a little bit and look at it. I'm so curious what your thinking might be about how
Yeah.
you would describe it, and then an example or two
This,
of how you would characterize it.
yeah, this question, I've actually given it a lot of thought, like this definition of success and what defines success. I have given it a lot of thought. And, I've come down ultimately, like my definition of success is the quality of relationships you've developed over your lifetime, right?
Mm,
And so for me, when I think about leadership and leadership successes, um, for me, it falls into two buckets. The first one is the impact I think I've had on other people and their career journey and their trajectory. I was sitting with a friend the other day, and we were just having a chat, and we were talking about the number of people that worked for me or with me at some point in my career and have gone on to be C-level executives somewhere else. Chief Technology Office, CIO, Security Office, Data Office, some office at a company somewhere. And that number is 15. So
wow.
15 people that have worked directly for me or have been on my teams throughout my career are somewhere out there in the world at a C-level position. And if they've taken even 5% of the ethos of what we've created about being human first to those companies and are
Mhm.
impacting those people, then for me, like that is success. Now, I'm not saying correlation equals causation. So what I'm not suggesting for a minute that these people have become CIOs or CTOs or whatever because of me. But I do feel like I've had a little bit of a hand in their journey. As well as the number of other people, who are trying to grow their careers and build their careers, and whether it was empowering women in the workplace and getting them to a new level and getting them a seat at the table. Um, so the first sort of success I define, the word I'll use is elevate. It's just
Mm,
elevating others to
mm.
be, to be the best that they can be. And so that is the one. And then the other is literally what I'm doing right now in terms of building Vasana. Um, you introduced me to this phrase and term many years ago, which is leadership is about leading people through the journey of not knowing.
Mhm.
And and Vasana is all about that. What we are doing is we are in uncharted territory, doing something that has never been done before. Um, and 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 we're doing it, right? We every single day we're waking up and we're achieving and we're doing it. Um, and it just feels right. So I would say for me, it falls into those two buckets. It's the network effect of what I think we've been able to create, with people that are out there and elevating them. And then what we're doing right now, which is truly doing something that has not been done before.
So thank you, and love hearing because I knew you would be like, no, we launched a program, and 3 months later we did this, and then 2 years later we did that. I knew that wasn't going to be the way that you approached it, and so the uniqueness in which you just spoke to success, which is about elevating others. That's what I heard. Um, help me understand a little bit because I know not one thing or five things or even 10 about how you do that.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
Yeah. Um, I think it starts with in order to lead a team, you have to be on the team. I think it starts there. Throughout my career, I've joined companies and my day one, they'd walk me to my office. And I'd have a corner office, a beautiful corner office. And the first thing I would say is, yeah, let's convert this office into a conference room and find me a cubicle out there with the rest of the team.
Mm,
Uh, so I think it just, and I don't mean that just from a visual side. I'd to actually be that. And so anyone who knows me, I'm with the team, I'm walking the floors, I'm talking to people, I'm engaging with people. I I use this phrase, let's bake cookies together.
mhm,
Everyone on my team. When I say let's go bake cookies together, it means let's work on something together. We have the raw ingredients and we're gonna put the ingredients together and we're gonna figure it out together. I'm not the leader who wants to sit at the end and taste cookies and tell you how they taste. I'm going to bake the cookies with you. So for me, it starts there. It starts by
right.
just being on the team. Then I think about it as, there needs to be energy. As a leader, you need to be able to bring the energy to the team. You need to be able to inspire action. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be moments of, you know, pressure, terror, excitement, all of these energy moments. And as a leader, you got to manage the energy. You got to bring the energy. You got to shape the energy. And so I think about, the energy layer first.
Yeah,
Um, and then I think it's empathy. It's really having the empathy to understand people and what's going on with people. Um, we all grow up with this phrase, treat people the way you like to be treated.
sure.
And I'm like, no, treat people the way they like to be treated.
They like to be treated.
And so to do that, like have some empathy. And this is back to the attention thing I said earlier. Pay attention to what's going on, right? I want to know what's happening in your life. I want to celebrate with you. I want to cry with you. I want to engage with you. I've been to, funerals of team members, that at funerals of deaths of family members. I've been to celebrations. I've been to weddings, which is unnatural for a leader, right? And some of them I was invited to, and some of them I was not. But you show up for your people,
Yes.
right? There's a deep caring. I'm one of my when I just moved to the US, I was reminded of this the other day. I had a team member on my team who had just moved from India and had an appendicitis operation and was then going to go to his apartment by himself. I'm like, who's going to take care of you? And he
Mm,
had no one. I'm like, you're going to come and stay with my wife and I for a week.
wow.
Um,
Wow.
And and for me, it's that's the attention thing, right? Um, and then the last piece is how do you do it? You elevate people. You have people, you grow their careers. I spend a lot of my time coaching, developing people and
Hmm.
having them be the best version of themselves. Like, don't be like me. Like, but let
Hmm.
me help you be the best version of yourselves. And don't get me wrong, Stephanie. I don't mean it's all about these soft things and touchy-feely and emotional
Yes.
stuff. When I do produce my resume, it's littered with stuff we've got done, right?
Yeah.
Improve revenue by X by Y and launch these products and had these impact by the products. So the outcomes speak for themselves. There's tremendous business outcomes that was delivered. I was just focused on the how to deliver those outcomes. And so for my leadership style is all focused on the how, and that is human first 10 out of 10 times.
That's fantastic. I was going to ask you, okay, because there are leaders who are very empathetic and very development oriented, though fewer than we would like to see, who though don't drive for the goalposts at the same time or don't join their team in driving for the goalposts. And
Right.
so there is that balance that I'm hearing, which has to do with being first for them, first for the team, first for elevating and developing, and in the name also of their own
Right.
lives, their own
Right.
good. But then also let's remember, you know, we do have a job to do as well.
Yeah, 100%, which, I'll tie it back to where we started this conversation, and that is ultimately I am mission driven, right? So what is the mission, right? And we don't want to
Yes.
lose sight of the mission. So yeah, if the mission is to drive a specific business outcome, launch a specific product, do a specific thing in a specific market, if that is our mission, then let's be drawn to that mission. And now this is all the how. How do we go after the mission? But yeah, our goal is to deliver the mission. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, okay, so now you've described as success, and I love you also said the second part was getting people excited about never doing something new, doing something that's
Yeah.
never been done before. So I wanted to just underline that, and then ask you a bit about, okay, that's what success feels like, in terms of how you develop. What is it feel like, or what is what's happened, or examples where it didn't work out the way you had hoped it would?
Yeah, I reflect on this a lot, I have to say.
Mm.
I think I'm a deeply reflective person. Um, whether we call it a leadership, sometimes I debate, is it a leadership failure? Is it a personal failure? Or like, how do I think about these things? But for me, it's always back to people. And it always comes down to the decision that was made to separate people from a company, right? Or to let people go. And I don't think there's a single company I've ever worked with where this didn't happen.
Yes.
And and so those were just really, really difficult leadership moments for me. Because as a leader, the number one question I would ask myself is, how did I fail these people? And how did we as leaders of this company fail
Yeah.
these people?
Yeah.
So for me, that was by far, the number one thing that I've just always struggled the most. And, as a leader, I've struggled with it. There's been a few situations where it was not required, right? There's some times where, yeah, in order to ensure the existence of the company and the survival of the company and the ongoing survival of everyone else, I can see how in those circumstances, this is required. But I've been in situations at companies where these decisions were made, to hit a P&L number, to hit a number, for a quarter or to hit a number for the year, and um, just didn't sit right with my values. Uh,
Yes.
and so,
Yes.
those were the things or are the things that just, I don't know, haunt me the most. or the things that as a leader I've had to struggle the most with, especially when the decisions were made that just go, counter to my values.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of us who can identify with that, and a lot of listeners who can identify with that. And so that is an interesting question unto itself. So the regrets are where it didn't resonate with my values, your values, and then having to take actions that you may not have viewed as necessary, but were required
Yeah,
in the environments. And this is where I think the dehumanization experience happens inside of work. One of the many ways
right,
that the dehumanization experience can happen in
right,
organizations where it's not a we, it's just an us.
right.
And you're not in the us, by the way, not meaning you, but that
Sure,
individual or group
sure.
of individuals. And so there's been uh, a discussion because so that's where it feels like a failure when it doesn't jibe with your values and it doesn't jibe, so there were maybe some mistakes made, maybe on your part, maybe on others' parts,
Sure.
or and and then yet the brunt of that falls lower in the organization. They take the brunt.
100%.
Yeah.
100. Yeah, yeah.
And I can really relate to that personally. I've had my own issues, but I also think that that's where we feel out of alignment with our own, when we're out of our own values as a leader or as an individual, and we can't act from what we believe in.
Right,
It's so um, stultifying. It just, it's like
right.
contracts our energy. And
Exactly.
so we can't be who we are. And so, with that in mind, you've managed, and this is an ongoing conversation. How did you manage to create havens in environments that were not intentionally harsh or intentionally not humanized, but rather in the name of profitability or in the name of quarterly results, shareholder being happy, they lost connection with others and lost connection. How did you manage to? Because, more often than not, you created that haven. And that's what I'm
Yeah,
finding with leaders. The ones that I want to talk to are the ones that do that,
right.
no matter what the system is.
Yeah. Yeah, look, throughout my career, wherever I've worked, the one thing I pride myself with is the quality of the team I worked with, right? Just amazing, amazing people. And I would work with any of them again in a heartbeat, right?
Mm.
If Vasana becomes what I think it can, one day I'll like, hey, all of you guys come join me on this mission. Every company I've ever worked with. Um, but I think the term you use is creating a safe haven, and I think that is important. And for me, it starts with trust, and it starts with creating psychological safety. The one thing I've always been with my teams is you will get 100% transparency from me, right? I was never the leader. I am not the leader that feels I need to have everything figured out before I communicate with people.
Mm.
What I will share is here's what's going on, here's what I know, here's what I don't know, and here's my plan to figure out the things that I don't know, and here's how you can help me, right? And some people are comfortable with that, some people are not. Some people just want to know, tell me when you figured it all out, right?
Yeah, right. Don't tell me that we're in between. Yeah.
Exactly. But I've always just felt that this notion of hyper transparency, so everyone knows what's going on, right? The other thing is, look, everyone you work with in a company level are grown adults at the end of the day, right? Whilst I do have a responsibility, they are adults. And so
Yes.
I do believe it is my ethical responsibility to provide them with all the information as I know it. So, they as adults can also make the best decisions for themselves and their family,
Mm.
independent of my influence. So, give
Mm.
them as much information as possible. And then, to the extent I can help and shape and guide and shepherd that, then I will do that as well. But for me, it's empowering them. We use this term so much, but empowering them to make decisions that they want to make as well. And for me, it's giving them the most knowledge I can about what's going on so that
Mm.
they can make the best decisions they can as well. They are adults. Let's allow them to be adults.
That's very counter to a lot of thinking in a lot of these leadership environments. They're like, no, don't tell them until the last minute. Don't tell them until we have it figured out. They're better off not knowing anyway, because what are they going to do with the
And
information?
this is where, Steph, my work is showing the neuroscience, the behavioral science is showing that all of those thinking that corporates have is wrong. Yeah, I'll give you a simple example. The thinking of don't fire people on a Friday, right? Don't let someone go on a Friday. It's going into the weekend and we shouldn't let people go. Let's wait till next week. Wrong. The,
Yeah,
the the health science of it is no, do it on a Friday
yeah,
because they're gonna go and be with their family and be with their friends and they have an entire weekend with the people that care about them at the moment that they need it the most. You're gonna
yes,
do it then on Monday. They don't have their support system around them,
yes,
right? And
yes.
so we've conjured up all these silly rules in corporates that actually are not in the best interest of people. If you actually took three steps back, it was the best interest of you. It didn't ruin your weekend, right? Uh,
Right,
but
right.
but you have to think about it very differently. Uh,
Yeah.
I think about it vastly differently. Like my brain, I think is just wired different.
Well, I think you will. My sense of you is that you really see the alignment that we have with the other humans that we're working with and living with, and that we need, and I'm extrapolating now, so correct me if I'm wrong. We need to meet people where they are. You talked
Yeah,
about what they need, not what we need. You talked about uh, what not giving feedback or support in the way that we want it, but in the way they want it. All of these factors have to do with meeting people where they are, understanding them, listening to them, creating
right,
space for them. This is at the crux to some degree of not having this relational connection, is at the crux of where you started in the interview, which talking about loneliness, the
right.
epidemic of loneliness that has been exacerbated, of course, by COVID and all of that, but nonetheless has shown up more and more. We're more disconnected than ever. So, I think that it's having the courage ultimately to go against the tide. And this is where, sometimes we have to make tough choices that put us at risk.
100%.
And we
Yeah.
have to have courage to do that because uh, money and the position power and all of that pulls on us. So tell me about you and that. Tell me about you and going against the grain and
Yeah.
maybe some of the toughest choices you've had to make.
This term leadership courage comes up a lot, when people are developing leadership and growing, you need to show leadership courage. And when I think about how companies think about that, and it's really like in a meeting, don't be afraid to speak up and add your view, and you should have the courage. Yeah, but what they don't tell you is, or at least what I believe is real leadership courage is when you start to make decisions that are contrary to everything that's going on in support of your values.
Mm,
Back to my co-conspirator example. See, in South Africa, when I was a co-conspirator, right, and you were in a march against apartheid or something, and people were getting arrested. See, as a co-conspirator, you're going to jail as well because you're a co-conspirator. I'm not an
yeah.
ally. I'm not a supporter because an ally, nothing's going to happen to you,
Yes.
right? And so leadership courage means you're willing to face the consequences of what's about to happen, right?
Yes.
And that's where earlier in my career, it was much harder. But as I grew in my career, I started saying, no, leadership courage is actually standing with your values and almost, putting where your money where your mouth is. And so For me, it comes in the form of when it goes against the grain of your values, making a decision, fighting hard for the people, for, getting your voice heard, doing all of the traditional leadership courage things, but then making the ultimate decision when that doesn't work to walk away and say, I'm gonna give up, the seduction of the title and the money. And look, don't get me wrong, like those things are amazing, like amazing titles, amazing money, compensation. But when you stack it up and you say, this just feels wrong, and I'm actually going to walk away from it. I did this exercise with my wife a few years ago. I have this phrase now. I can actually now put a value to my values. I've actually tallied up how much money I've left on the table at places I've left. Um,
Wow.
and just because it just didn't fly with my values. And that's not an insignificant number. Um, but it's something that I sleep well at night, knowing
Yes.
that, you know what, I made that decision in support of my values. For me, that is what leadership courage looks like. But it sent the toughest message to the organization and the leadership that says, if I'm now willing to put my personal vested interest at stake for this,
Yes.
this is how meaningful this is, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think that action oftentimes triggers the action you seek, right? For to get the others to do what they need to do, you need to do something of an outsized impact that
Yes.
creates personal strife and impact to you. You're going to give up something of your own, but that will now finally force them to act. And if that's what's required, that's what's required.
It's powerful and selfless and impactful, which, all leaders that are true leaders, that's what they're looking for. I I'm thinking about your history and I'm thinking about your path, and everyone's is so unique. There's something about surviving, knowing that you can come back from whatever happens. There's something about trusting, when it's easy to get hypnotized and forget about what we're capable of as human beings. And most people overwhelmingly know exactly the values you're talking about because we share them, we have them in common. It's just how much do we put them on the shelf
Totally.
in the name of perception of safety?
Steph, 27 years ago, my wife and I came to the US, right? We'd never been to the US before. We'd never been on a long haul flight before. Um, and, we were packing our bags in South Africa. And we literally, each of us was allowed 2 bags each. So we were allowed 4 bags. And we packed our entire life in 4 bags. And we did not even know what to pack because we didn't know what to expect here. And so we had 2 plates and 2 spoons and 2 knives and 2 forks. And like, we had no idea where we were coming. And
Yes.
so that's where our journey literally started is 4 bags and a negative bank balance, believe it or not. And that's what
Wow.
we came with, right? And so to your point around risk, when I think about it at the end of the day, I'm willing to put things on the line
Yes.
because I can go back to 4 bags and start from there. That's where I started, right? And so for me, at the end of the day, and we were happy. Don't hear any of that as a complaint. We were happy as could be. And so when I think about it, it's like, yeah, well, these are all material things, titles, the seduction of money. I can go back to 4 bags and build back again. It's not a life and death thing, yet we think everything is.
That's right. That's right. It feels so overwhelming and the pressure feels so real to people. And the empathy, of all the teams you've talked about, there are going to be people you've inherited, people you've invited and hired and developed that may not have had that knowing that you have. We talk about the journey of not knowing, which is going on in spite of not knowing the way things are going to turn out and having that discomfort, but being comfortable enough with that to keep going. There are a lot of people that have no doubt come into your realm that didn't feel empowered, didn't feel uh, like they could take risks, didn't feel or have an experience of knowing that they could rely on themselves more. And but it sounds like to me you're open to letting, and tell me if this is right, open to letting those in, anyone in that wants to come in or it's appropriately there, and then giving them an opportunity to have a different experience, to find their own
Absolutely.
strength. Yes?
Absolutely. I embrace anyone and everyone at any level, um, and just focus on how can I help you be the best version of yourself.
Mm, mm,
Um, the number of people that I coach or reach out to me or seek advice, and these are people that I've just met throughout my career, is phenomenal. And so, people will check in with me and like, how do you handle this? And I'm like, this is how I would handle it, but it's not necessarily how you should handle it. Like, so let's talk about you and your circle and your values, right? Don't replicate what I've done. Become the best version of yourself. And the minute you figure out what that is, I'm going to help you get there, whatever that is.
ah, well, your mouth to everybody's ears, okay? Because I think that's um, such an important message at a time now, in particular, where there's a lot more pressure, there's a lot more fear, there's a lot more, not knowing in at levels that people are. There's a lot of uncertainty out there,
Right.
and so you know, I think where you're coming from is so essential and so powerful as understanding people. What do you think leaders need the most now?
Um, I actually think a mandate. Um, it's surprising how many companies hire leaders, but actually don't really give them a mandate, meaning they don't empower them. Um, you get hired at a company, and the company has a way of working and has a style of working, and that's all they want to do, and they don't want to change, and they don't want to modify things, and you keep bringing on new leaders, yet you're not open to doing anything or giving that leader a mandate and a true empowerment,
Mm,
to shape, shepherd, guide, build new.
mm,
So I think that's the first thing leaders need, right? Is
mm-hmm,
actual true support and mandate from the board and from the senior executive team.
mm-hmm,
Truly have to be given the mandate and the support to do what they need to do. Uh,
mm-hmm,
so I think it starts there. Um, I think I think they need to be given access to the resources and tools that are required to be successful. Um, as leaders get brought in, companies want to drive amazing change, but you're not willing to give the leaders the resources and the tools. And sometimes that's the people, it's the capability, it's the budget. Sometimes it's just the process, right? And so leaders need that. Um, and then they need the ability to build the team
mm-hmm,
the way they need to build the team.
mm-hmm.
Right? Every leader has a different leadership style. I'm not suggesting mine is the best style, um, but each leader has a way of working, and they need the ability to build that team and that way of working to suit their playbook. If
Yes,
you hire them for their playbook, and then you don't allow them to execute their playbook,
yes, yeah, yeah.
right?
It
Um,
does become constraining, and it does, I think it really gets in the way of innovation and productivity and alignment and all of those things that companies are seeking all the time. And
yeah.
so it sounds like they need what you do on your teams, which is give them mandate, give them support, give them resources, right? And give them the ability to actually do the work you're asking them to do while you're supporting them along the way. So that sounds very consistent.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to ask you to come back. I know we're kind of at at our transition point, but I want to ask you to come back and have another conversation and help us learn how Vasana is doing and how I think there's a lot of lessons here that we can learn more from. And so I'd like to ask you to come back another time.
For sure, Steph, for you, my phone rings and it's Steph on the phone, I'll answer. So yes, absolutely, anytime, and more than
Thank
happy to, I've learned some lessons along the way, and to the extent these lessons are valuable to others, I'm more than happy to share. I'm very accessible to any of your listeners. It's not hard to find me on the social media platforms. Feel free to find me. And one of the things, if people are interested in Vasana,
Yes,
people can feel free to, message me or DM me and just mention this podcast. If they mention this podcast, we'll give them a 1 year free membership to the platform.
fantastic. Oh boy. Well, that's fantastic. Well, we'll publicize that too. Well, you are wonderful. Thank you again for taking the time and to give your insights and your experiences. I just really appreciate you, Veresh.
Of
Thank
course,
you.
of course. Happy anytime. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. To hear more conversations with leaders, please subscribe to The Toughest Choice wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates, please connect with me on LinkedIn. This is Stephanie Reynolds. Thanks for listening.